If you have ever taken a day off and somehow felt more restless instead of relaxed, stay with me for the next few minutes because for a certain type of high performer, calm doesn't feel peaceful, it feels unfamiliar. And once you see why, a lot of your past behavior may suddenly start to make sense. This is not about weakness, it is not about your poor discipline, and it is definitely not because you don't know how to relax. In fact, many of the people who experience this pattern are highly capable, highly responsible, and externally high performing very well. But internally, their system is still running slightly hot, and most of them don't realize it at first. Maybe you have noticed moments like this. You finally get a free evening, and instead of fully unwinding, you find yourself reaching for a phone, or you go on a vacation, and after the first day or two, your mind quietly is scanning ahead again. Or objectively speaking, life is relatively stable right now, but your body still has not completely powered down. If any of that feels familiar, you're not unusual. High functioning nervous system do this more often than most people realize. What many driven professionals eventually discover is this: when you spend enough years operating under pressure, the body can quietly adapt to it, not as a conscious choice, but as a learned operating pattern. So when pressure finally drops, instead of immediately relief, the system can become subtly uneasy. What we are looking at here is not just mindset habit. Very often it is a nervous system pattern. And interestingly, high performers are especially prone to it because the same trait that helps someone become successful in demanding environment can also drain the body to stay activated more than activated than necessary. I started noticing this pattern after repeated conversation with many people who were doing extremely well on paper: senior leaders, founders, highly dependable professionals. From the outside, their life looks stable. Inside, their system is still running in a higher gear. Not dramatically, just consistently. High gear. And here is it's get particularly interesting. Most of them are not consciously choosing stress. Their body simply learned that intensity is normal, which creates a very specific experience letter of life. Sometimes the hardest state for a high performer to tolerate. Sometimes the hardest state for a high performer to tolerate is sustained calm. Is sustained calm. Sustained calm. So, in the next part, let me introduce you to a pattern I have seen repeatedly in very capable professionals, because what looks aligned, pure ambition surface is sometimes something much more physiological underneath. Let me tell you about someone I call Arjun. On paper, his life was good, very good. Senior, strong income, respectable by the people around him. Respected by the people around him. If you look at his calendar, it is full. If you look at his output, it is consistently strong. From outside, nothing appeared out of place. Nothing appeared out of place. Arjun was the kind of professional most organization quietly depends on. You can relate. Reliable when things got intense, responsible when timelines tightens, and able to go in when others started to feel overwhelmed. This looked exactly like ambition. In fact, if you ask the people around him, they will probably describe him as highly driven. And in many ways, that was true. But there was one detail he hadn't really questioned himself. It started to showing up in a small ways. He took finally day off, and instead of fully relaxing, he felt slightly an age. Vacation helped at first. The first 24 hours usually felt fine, but by the second and third day, his mind was already beginning to scan ahead. Even quiet evening at home, at a certain background tension, nothing dramatic happened, just persistent. His mind could not stay calm. It is not unusual. High functional professional experience these far more often than most people realize. And for a long time, Arjun simply assumes this was normal. After all, he was performing very well. But the more pressure he was under, the more focus he felt, tight deadlines, clear thinking, high stake situation, sharp execution. Moments that push others into stress often pull him into clarity. But extended calm, that was strangely uncomfortable. What Arjun was slowly beginning to see was this. High performance was not just supported by stress, but his nervous system had adapted to depend on it. Stress. Yes, this is where many high performers quietly misunderstanding themselves. From the outside, it looks like pure drive. Inside the body, it can be something much more conditioned. Because when the nervous system spend enough high pressure environment and it learns well, because when the nervous system is spent enough years operating in high pressure environment, it learns, which is exactly why this pattern is easy to miss. There was no dramatic crash, just a system. Because stress addiction rarely announces itself loudly. Yes, you heard it correctly. Stress addiction. Most of the time, it hides inside high performance. So the real question becomes, what is actually happening inside the nervous system when calm starts to feel unfamiliar? To answer that, we need to look. What we are describing here is not just a mindset habit. Very often, it is a physiological pattern. And once you begin to understand how the nervous system actually operates, Arjun's experience later start to make a lot more sense. The human nervous system has one primary responsibility above everything else. The human nervous system has one primary responsibility above everything else. Not happiness, not productivity, not even success. Its first job is survival. Yes, its first job is survival. Very broadly speaking, your nervous system moves between two major states. One is activation, where the body mobilizes energy, focus, and alertness. Energy, focus, and alertness. And other is regulation, where the body stay calm, repairs, and recover. Both states are necessary. Activation and regulation. Both are healthy. When the system can move between them easily, flexibly, then it is healthy. So when things become interesting is with highly driven professional, because many high professional becomes exceptionally good, well trained in the activation gear, deadlines, pressure, high responsibility environment, all of this repeatedly exercise the body's mobilization system. But many people never deliberately train the second gear. Yeah, so the system becomes extremely good at speeding up and less practice at fully standing calm. Under sustained pressure, the body releases a predictable chemistry. Stress rises, attention narrows, reaction speeds improve. In the short term, this is incredibly useful, which is exactly why high demand environment strangely energizing. The body does not judge this situation, whether the stress is good or bad. It simply learns what is repeatedly most often. So over time, if someone spends years operating under high pressure cycle, the nervous system can become to treat that intensity as the expected baseline normal, which creates a very specific experience later of life. When life finally becomes calm, the body doesn't always recognize as normal. In some cases, it even interprets sustained calm as unfamiliar, not as dangerous in a dramatic sense, but unfamiliar to keep the system slightly alert. Can you relate this? Take a pause and relate this. This is why can be objectively successful, objectively safe, objectively stable, but internally he's of age. The nervous system is not malfunctioning, it is running the pattern it learned most repeatedly. It is running the pattern it learns most thoroughly. But biology alone doesn't fully explain how these patterns become so deeply wired. Because for many high performers, the root of this pattern go back further than their career. And that is where the story gets even more interesting. And that we'll listen in the next part of the video.